Hey everybody, welcome, and thank you for listening to this episode of Marriage Therapy Radio. My name is Zach Brittle. I'm here with Laura Heck and Allison Raskin. Allison Raskin has just written a book called I Do, I Think. We loved talking to her. She is a super smart lady who has done a bunch of interviews around the notion of a modern marriage. And she's got a YouTube channel. She is all over Instagram as the emotional support lady, so an advocate for mental health and just, I think, reasonable thinking about what marriage is. I'm looking forward to reading more of her book. I think you should get it right now. And if you don't believe me, we'll let her tell you all about it. This is a very cool conversation. Stick around. Allison Raskin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We are delighted to have you. You have a new book out. It's called I Do, I Think. Is that right?
I think.
Yeah, I do. I think. Conversations about modern marriage.
Cool. Well, we're glad to have you. We're just gonna like shoot the beep for a little while. And but yeah, tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're at and what's going on. Like we're looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I could talk for hours, but I'll do the summarized version, which is I'm a writer. I'm a relationship expert, which is this new title I've been trying to claim. I have a master's in psychology, and this is now my second book about sort of relationships, and then always kind of the intersection of relationships and mental health, because I'm also a big mental health advocate, and that's something I'm really passionate about.
And you're kind of fancy, right? This is your second book. You're a New York Times bestseller. You got a whole YouTube situation going on, and that you're a relationship expert. What does that even mean to you that you're trying to claim it now?
Well, technically, it's my fourth book, but it's my second nonfiction book. And yeah, I mean, I came up on the internet. Like I worked at BuzzFeed Video back in 2014, 2015. I went to school for screenwriting. I very much thought that I wanted to just like write TV comedy. And then everyone was like, actually, we're never going to let you do that, but you can write literally everything else. So my career has sort of been expansive in a really fun and sometimes stressful way. But the branch of it that I'd love to talk to you guys about today is really that intersection of like the mental health and relationships. And I've started claiming the term relationship expert because my friends and loved ones say that I can.
Cool. So. Yeah. I like it. And where you are in LA, did you mention that?
Yeah, I live in LA. I grew up in Westchester, New York, but I am now back. And I say back, I was, unfortunately, I spent the last like 9 weeks in New York caring for my mother before she passed away. So it's a wild time right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then that's why you have your haircut. Yeah. Did you cut your hair like your mom?
Yeah, I got the Ruth, as I call it, which is
that's so cool.
Her iconic bob with bangs. So
that's very cool. Yeah. Okay. So tell me a little bit, like, what is it about this book? Like, what is it that you're exploring? What kind of brought about the whole concept of I Do, I Think?
Yeah. So I had written a book called Overthinking About You, Navigating Romantic Relationships When You Have Anxiety, OCD, and or Depression. And the catalyst for that book was really me realizing that like I had gotten so much better at being in relationships and dating once I got my mental health in a better place and like the intersection between those two things and how they play off each other. And while I was writing that book, I got engaged, which was like so exciting because that was like all I'd ever wanted. I've been very focused on marriage my whole life, probably for a combination of how wonderful my parents' marriage was. And then also just, you know, when you grow up sort of mentally ill, there's like this element of like loneliness and like, am I unlovable? And if someone could just vouch for me, then maybe things will be good.
I brought my 3 friends with me on the date and they each have a speech to give you about how amazing I am, even if you can't see it.
Or just like someone choosing to be your life partner is this sort of this validation that you are lovable, that you are worthy. These are thoughts that I used to have that obviously I had to do a lot of unpacking around. But then when I was writing that book, my fiance actually abruptly left me with like very little reason other than like something was missing. And so that really rattled my whole thoughts around marriage. Like I understood that people got divorced, that the divorce rate was high, but in my personal life, there was like almost no divorce in my family. I'd had this sense that like if I could just find someone, then it would work, it would last. And so I suddenly was like, oh, actually making this commitment to someone, it doesn't ensure you anything other than the hope that it will work. And so as I started to sort of have to work through my new relationship towards marriage, I started working on the book I think, which is sort of this investigation of modern marriage and why do people still do it now that we don't need to anymore. So it's really blown out past my experience. And I look at the history of marriage, the future of marriage. I interview a lot of experts about, finances, couples therapy, how to pick partners, compatibility, divorce, hardship, all these different things, and sort of just like examine this massive institution from every angle that was like important to me. And the goal was sort of to say like, what are the possibilities now that we can shape marriage much more than we used to be able to in the past? And does it still mean something? Why are we still drawn to it, even though like in a lot of ways it's not societally necessary anymore?
Yeah. Can I ask, when you say marriage, like, are you referring to monogamous, like one partner marriage? Like, I'm wondering kind of what it gets explored within the context of the book of like the different pairings and ways that you can partner.
Yeah. So in the sex chapter, I talk a lot about non-monogamy and polyamory and how marriage does not ensure monogamy in any way, but also how a lot of fears around marriage are sort of based in that. And like, can you maintain this sexual spark and sexual relationship with someone, for the rest of your life? So I'm talking about marriage in terms of the legality of it, but not in terms of like what that looks like between two partners and their arrangements.
So in the context of the book, it's more like marriage as a legal declaration, not strictly as a relational construct. And then you explore the relational constructs around that are possible or whatever.
Yeah, like, because the difference between being cohabitating right now and marriage is the legal part, right? Like that it's this public declaration, it's involving the government, it's adding this layer of both protection, but also making it more difficult to leave, right? Like you can't just like walk out of your marriage the way you can walk out of living with a partner. So just sort of exploring like, what does that extra level do to a relationship? Is it necessary? Why does it work for some people and not work for other people? And all that jazz.
Yeah, that's cool. I used to teach a pre-marriage class, and I would ask this question about like, why do you want to get married? And they'll say, because I want to spend my life with somebody. And then I would say, well, you can spend your life with somebody without getting married.
Right.
Yeah.
You can also get married and not spend your life with somebody.
Totally.
Even if you're living in the same house. So I love it. I have a maybe it's a semantic question, but I feel like you must have made this choice on purpose. When I was in graduate school, everything was about postmodernity, postmodernism, da 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 da. And I wonder why you chose this idea of modern marriage. Do you mean contemporary, or is it some kind of does it have some other loaded meaning, maybe relative to postmodernity?
Or did the publishers say, this is what we're calling it because this is what people know?
I gotta tell you, when I was learning about all the postmodern thought in grad school, I was like, this is confusing. Yeah. So I just honestly, I just mean of today. I just mean of 2024 and
it's not
the next few years.
It's not a commentary on art or culture or technology or, evolved thought. Okay, that's interesting.
It's not evolved at all, is what I'll say. Yeah, no.
Got it.
I'm joking.
Well, I think when I was in graduate school, which again was like in 1999, 2000, it was a trendy thing to talk about and to have ideas about, but I still don't think I understand what it means. But when I saw the title, I was like, I wonder if that's juxtaposed to anything. But yeah, that's helpful.
What is there a statistic? I'm just wondering, like, what percentage of folks are getting legally married these days? Like, are we in decline? Do you happen to know that statistic? Because I heard a rumor that like my nieces and nephews, the generations that are sort of like of college age and marriage age, are choosing not to get married these days at like a rapid rate. So just curious.
Yeah, mine are 18 and 22 and have no interest in marriage. Yeah.
The rates are definitely down. Less people are getting married now. And then people are also getting married older. And I actually think that those are two wonderful things because what my goal for marriage in the future is that it's something you opt into rather than something you feel you have to be a part of.
Sure.
So if we have less people getting married, we have people getting married when they're older and are able to maybe make more thoughtful and informed decisions about who they're marrying and why, then suddenly like marriage as a thing is going to change, right? Because it's going to be these people that want it and that are nurturing it and don't feel as trapped in it because of now the stigma that's sort of lessened around divorce. And so it'll sort of just be like an option rather than like the ball and chain that I feel like a lot of us grew up hearing it be talked about.
Yeah, we have a whole section. We just came out with a book this September that talks about sliding versus deciding and how important it is to be able to actually decide and choose for yourself rather than just kind of sliding into societal norms. So yeah. What did you have any aha moments like through your interviews that you were doing with your experts or your own research that just kind of blew your mind that you were excited to share with other people?
I think I had a really interesting conversation sort of about obligation, because when my ex-fiance left, like I felt so much anger that he hadn't tried to make it better, that like he hadn't put in the work to at least see, like first of all, I didn't understand how unhappy he was. And then to him just to leave, I was like, but that's not what you do. Like you have to like really work on things. That's how relationships work. And look, I still think that there is, look, I don't think you should get into a relationship if you have no intention on ever working on it. But I also think this idea that we hold our partners to being able to predict how they'll feel in the future and what they'll want for themselves in the future is like not actually fair. So that was like a huge reframing I had through a talk with a wonderful therapist, and just this idea of like, it doesn't really matter what someone's intentions were at the time. Like to be a true partner is to allow someone to grow and change. And sometimes that means that the relationship no longer fits.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because so Zach and I are both therapists and we're working with couples on a daily basis. And the primary issue that this relationship is having is that like, I will just say he keeps coming back to, I didn't sign up for this. Like the version of you that I signed up for 10 years ago isn't here today. And that's like, he just keeps coming back to that. And, I think she's kind of at the point where she's like, I think I need you to accept who I am today because I've evolved and changed and I'm a mother and I'm different. And this is what a relationship is that growth together. But he's really like, he feels duped that the person that he signed up for to be married to is no longer the same person with the same values and sees the world in the same way.
I'd also argue that okay, so then maybe they don't work anymore. Like I think that was like this other big takeaway I had was also, one of the other therapists was saying like, yes, sometimes you can like really put in the work and over a decade you can like repair and fix but like some people don't want to do that. Like sometimes it is just easier and just a better choice to say like, this would come more naturally if I was with someone else. And therefore, like, maybe it's time to part ways. So that's a big change for me personally of being able to recognize, like, sometimes the work isn't worth it. And like this constant uphill battle with your partner, sometimes like divorce exists for a reason.
Do you have any theories on how you know? How do you know when the work isn't worth it?
Oof. Well, so I have OCD, so the question of how do you know is always a tricky one, right? Because it's the doubting disease. So I really, I actually urge people to lean into the uncertainty and their tolerance for the uncertainty. In that, like, you won't ever really like know if this is the right person. You won't know if this is the right decision. Like, you can just do your best educated guess and then have the grace for yourself if like it didn't work out, right? And so I think if once you're in couples therapy, like you have to be committed to wanting it to work, or else the therapy isn't really going to work. I think when you have, from what I've been told, when you have someone whose foot is out the door, it's not going to be the effective tool that it can be. So I think if you decide to go into couples therapy, I think you really have to feel like my goal is to work on this. I'm open to the idea that we will be able to, but my goal is that, versus like, I really don't want to be here, but I'm just going to sit through it.
Mm-hmm. You started talking about something where I was like, ooh, okay, so modern marriage, if the old version of marriage was till death do us part, you get one partner your entire life and you got to make it work. Then this whole idea of like two people growing and then maybe just sort of deciding, I don't think that our lives fit together anymore. And my mom actually had this experience where she and her partner were together for 20 years. And then they got to an age between 40 and 60. Between 40 and 60, they did really, really well together. And then 60 came and it was a new version of my mom's chapter in life. And she basically was like, I don't think you fit into this next chapter. Like, I have a lot of things that I want to be doing. And so they amicably split. And that was kind of modern for me, like this whole idea of not until death do us part, but until we decide that we are no longer good fits for each other's life paths. And I'm wondering, like, do you explore that? What are your thoughts on this idea of kind of like maybe serial, well, I guess they would call it serial monogamous, right?
I think as long as you're treating people with respect and honesty, then you can sort of navigate your life however you want to. And I think that's like a really beautiful decision that your mother made, and a strong one, especially probably with the generation and the messaging she grew up with.
Big time.
My mom and dad divorced when I was, maybe they were married 20 something years, and she got remarried in her early 50s. And at their wedding, they agreed to get married for 35 years. Their vows were, then all bets are off.
Yeah.
So they had just kind of this realization, he was divorced also, and that maybe it was until death do us part, but they gave themselves till 85 to then renegotiate terms. Hey, you have an ex-fiance, but you also have a husband, right? You got a new fiance and a new situation. Is that
wait,
is that
what?
Real?
Oh yeah, I'm married now. Yes.
How's that going? Like,
it's going really well.
Yeah. I mean, I we could elevate this old painful story, which is, I think, important and sounds like it shapes you. But talk about how your own marriage has shaped your whole philosophy.
So it was really interesting writing the book, because during the process, as you guys know, books take forever. So I was dating him, I got engaged to him, and I got married to him, all while working on this book. And, I think that it was really helpful for me to understand why this thing was so important. Like, as much as I learned that for a lot of people, they don't need marriage, I also reaffirm that I do. And that probably has a lot to do with my own emotional history, my relationship history, my family, my culture, and realizing that for me to feel like I could elevate John from my partner to my family, like the marriage piece was necessary. And then to, basically right around the 1 year mark for my mom to get so very sick, in a way, she died from CJD, which is a super rare prion disease that like is basically like elements of dementia, but like sped up. So her decline in 6 weeks is like what normal people would go through in years.
No way.
Yeah, she was totally like normal in July and died in September. So it was wild.
Wow.
And, I talk in the book about hardship and how like you don't know how your partner is going to behave in certain situations until they happen. Like, we can collect evidence, right? We can see like, how do they behave under daily stressors? How do they behave in smaller versions of that? But like, how was my husband going to handle my dying mother and my family, me, like all these things?
Yeah.
And I'm just so like, throughout the whole process, I was just so thankful that this was happening during a time when I was married rather than earlier, because my relationship with my mother was like one of the strongest ties in my life. Like half my persona on the internet is just someone who's obsessed with their parents. So this, it's always a loss to lose a parent. But for me, I mean, she was my best friend. She was my tether. Like if I had lost that relationship without being in partnership, I think I would have felt so unmoored and it like I wouldn't have felt like I existed in a strange way. And so it just, again, just like really confirmed that like marriage was so the right choice for me, and that I had married someone that like had the same understanding of marriage, had the same understanding of what it means to show up for each other. We were talking yesterday about how I really appreciated that like during that time, I didn't have the capacity to be his wife because I was being her daughter, you know, like there's only so much energy. And so he had to carry the marriage for a bit, and he had to show up as my husband day after day while I was showing up as her daughter day after day. And it just like, it makes it so when I go out, I talk about marriage and why it's good. I'm like, yeah, it really helps if it's the right choice for you.
Yeah. Ooh, I mean, I'm trying to gather my thoughts because there's a lot there, even like in the symbolism of sort of like the trading off from going from being your parents' daughter to then being a partner, like even in the symbolism around a wedding ceremony. Yeah. And also how in relationships, I guess kind of part of my thought process too, is that we go in and out of times where we do have the capacity to show up and be super attuned to our partner as a lover, as a partner, as a spouse. But I would say often it is just this constant missing of each other, where like the moment you have the capacity to be a partner to your husband, he might be really hyper focused on growing his career. And that's something that he's not able to attune to you in that same way. And just like the lack of attunement that we have in relationships where it doesn't line up.
But I think being able to acknowledge that, to be able to say like, I know you're showing up for me more than I can show up for you. And I'm so thankful and grateful for that. You know, the acknowledgement can go a lot further than I think we think.
Oh, I 100% agree. Interestingly, it's usually the men in my practice that are saying that they need more verbal acknowledgement of how they're showing up, that there's a lot of requests made of them and a lot of like maybe criticisms, but not a lot of acknowledgement. And I know that like females in general will say, I feel like I don't have a lot of gratitude in my relationship, but I'm getting it a lot more from men, that verbal acknowledgement does go a really long way with them.
I think for everyone, right? Like, I mean, and not to like break us down to like our most primal parts, but just with the behavioral modification of if you do something and then you get praise for it, you're going to want to keep doing it. So it's smart. It's smart for both people to be in that habit of when you like what your partner does, to be like, thank you so much.
Yeah. Zach, I have more questions, but I don't want to take over.
Well, no, I mean, I'm happy to, that sounds great. I have a couple, like you said, a couple of things that make me go, well, what'd you find out? You know, you interviewed financial advisors or some kind of, you know, and the thing that comes up in our office a lot is this idea of like, how do we do this thing called, you know, you connect in a fiduciary way? Like, I wonder what your takeaways are here in that space. But that's a curiosity I have. If Laura, you're welcome to chase the rabbit too.
I'd say that the finances of it all is one of like the most progressive and exciting parts of modern marriage.
Okay.
Like, because it used to really be that we were mostly seeing one income homes with shared resources and a spouse that often a woman who wasn't in the workforce, and that dynamic. And now we just have so many more dual income homes. We have so many different ways that people can deal with their money. You know, for some couples, pooling money is a great option. I actually think it can actually be pretty beneficial often to pool your resources, because you can just, you know, take kind of riskier investments, maybe reach your financial goals faster. Like, you're just like two against the world in this way that can actually give you this leg up. But also for a lot of people, based on their histories, maybe any trauma they have around money or finances, it can feel like too scary to join finances, right? Or not worth the risk. And so, but they want the marriage part. So knowing that, like, yes, we can be married, but I can also keep my own assets. You can keep your own assets. If this doesn't last, I won't succumb to the same fate that maybe my mother did when she was left. Or, you know, we also really have to pay attention to people's histories and triggers when it comes to all of marriage, but finances in particular, I think. And so just really opening the door for people to understand that there's no right way to do it, that you can have so many different arrangements when you're married. And I think that one of the big takeaways is how important it is to protect a spouse that removes themselves from the workforce, because those people are really vulnerable. And so making sure that if someone stays home, often for childcare reasons, that they have a prenup in place, they have a postnup in place, that their partner is putting money into a retirement plan for them. You know, you just don't want any sort of situation where if the relationship ends, one person's lifestyle, you know, sinks dramatically while the other person can maintain the same level. You want, you know, you want it to be fair. And it can reveal a lot about a partner to figure out what that would look like, you know, what terms they give you in a prenup or a postnup, and how they think about you and your future as an individual and not just in the couple.
Man, I absolutely love that concept of protecting a partner who removes himself from the workforce. Like, I think that is a modern notion. I say to couples all the time, like, the hard part about money, and then maybe it's the only part of a marriage that it's brutal because you can measure it, right? Like, I make this, you make that. You're worth this is worth that, you know, and you can't really measure intimacy or connection or, you know, so. I mean,
domestic labor is a huge contribution that people make to marriages. And
there's all those infographics about the value of a stay-at-home mom who is the CEO and the chef and the chauffeur and the housekeeper and like they're worth like $300,000 or something, you know, because of all the parts they play. Yeah.
And so just like, again, like talking about that, vocalizing that, acknowledging it, not just, and also making sure that you're not in a situation where the power dynamics are super off or based solely around who's bringing in money, you know, because you're bringing in expertise, you're bringing in emotional labor, domestic labor, all of these different things to a relationship. And so I think hopefully we're getting to a point where people can start to believe that. You know, I think so many men and people socialized as men are taught that their financial contribution is the only thing that matters. And we really need to break free of that. There's so much more that comes to a relationship than just the financial.
As you were talking about like these different arrangements and the idea of a modern marriage being what the two of you co-construct together, what makes the most sense, I have had a couple of marriages come in and they're actually all second marriages. And they're really kicking around the idea of having two separate homes, living in two separate homes. And I'm wondering if you bumped into any conversations in the writing of this book around even just like the physical arrangement of two people in either two separate homes, living in, or maybe even like sleeping in two separate rooms, what that looks like.
I thought about it a lot. You know, no one I interviewed directly had that living situation. But I do think that is another example of the flexibility and also like the removal of judgment. I had an ex-boyfriend whose parents lived in different states because of their jobs. And I remember when I found out about that, I like made some crack about what it said about their marriage. And he was so upset because he knew that wasn't true. Like he knew that from the outside that people must have been making these assumptions, but they were a very happily married couple who during this period of their life, they happened to live apart, but you know, it worked for them and they had no intention of breaking up. And so I think like just being less removing our judgments around these different structures and realizing that like everyone's needs is different, everyone's wants are different, and that like if separate bedrooms is what works for you, then that's fantastic that you figured out what works for you. If separate houses is something you're able to do and you like and it makes it so you can stay happily married, that's fantastic.
So speaking of bedrooms, you did a little bit of, I wonder what you learned about sex and intimacy. There's a chapter in your book all about kind of maintaining the spark. And what's the key takeaway there for folks that are listening?
One thing I found that I hadn't really thought about before was I think we put so much onus on our partner to be attractive to us. And like we can feel like annoyed or resentment if they're not attractive to us, but we never realize that like part of the responsibility is for us to find them attractive and for us to tap into the things that we find attractive about them. So, I kind of give like an example of like, if you really love when your partner sings karaoke, but like you haven't been that, connected, go book karaoke, like go,
Totally.
like set up situations so that you're seeing them in the light when you feel drawn to them, rather than just falling into like we don't do anything other than work and parent and go to bed. Like create these situations so that you can see the sides of them that you do feel that romantic and sexual pull towards, rather than being like, well, why don't I ever feel that anymore? You have to create those environments.
Totally. I
love that.
Yeah, I do too. It's funny because I've shared this on the podcast before, that the times in which I find my husband most sexy are when he is very much so leaning into like the masculine side of him, which I don't see a lot of. I see a lot of him being nurturing. I see a lot of him being like a daddy. And when he's on the golf course, when he's running a business meeting, like these are the times when I need to be putting my ear up to the wall to be like listening into him being a boss, so I can get a little wet and like whatever. That's probably a little too explicit, but I think it's hot when he's super masculine. And every once in a while, I will go just ride around on the golf course to watch him swing and to see him interacting with other men and just to like rev my engines a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love
interesting.
that.
Did you have any people that you bumped up in sort of like the sex area, like experts that you were just like, man, these people are doing it right. I'm digging their work, their research, whatever it might be. But do you follow certain sexperts, if you will, that you really enjoy?
I don't, but that was actually one of the big suggestions, was like that we all have these beliefs around sex that are not helpful. And so following, experts in the, like sex positive experts, people that are like informative about the human body and sexual experience can actually be a way to unlearn these messaging that isn't helping us, and to like rethink about our own bodies and sexuality. I still have work to do in this area, but but that's okay. We all have work to do. And sometimes I'll have energy for it and sometimes I don't.
I think you've been busy. You've been very busy the last few months. Like, understandable.
Yes.
Okay, I do have a question. Tell me about your YouTube channel, because I was poking around, and first of all, I was like, when can I sit on a couch with Zach? Because I would much rather do our podcast, like just chilling on the couch, hanging out with my animal, whatever it might be. But I'm really curious about the YouTube channel. Like, where did that come from? And like, how did that come to light? Like, how did that get created?
When I was in college, I took a web series class, and this was like in 2010. And my teacher was like, you need to make stuff for the internet. Things are going to be on the internet. And I was like, okay. And like, when like, you're like, oh, one random piece of advice shaped my entire life. That did.
Oh my gosh.
And, so from that moment, I started making stuff for the internet. And for a while, it was sort of like one-offs. I did like a couple short web series with different people. And then I met my comedy partner, Gabe Dunn. We were like waiting outside of an open mic in Hollywood and just started like talking on the sidewalk. And, we both wanted to create something that we could keep going. Like, we realized that like the way to grow the audience is to do something weekly. And so we were like, what is like something we could actually commit to and do?
Yeah.
And so we came up with this like very silly advice channel where we were playing like heightened versions of ourselves, giving like horrible advice. And then like the advice was, like the questions from the audience. No, we didn't have an audience. So I just made them up,
Sure.
And this channel is called Just Between Us. And then during that time, we both got hired at BuzzFeed Video, which obviously helped us get a much bigger audience. And then the channel has just grown and evolved with us. Once we left BuzzFeed, we had the bandwidth to make sketches. So for a few years there, we had an original sketch on the channel every single week, in addition to the couch show. And now
so cool.
we 5 years ago, we moved it to a podcast. So Just Between Us is now a podcast. And then we're back to just doing the shorter couch show episodes on the YouTube channel, but it's sort of just become the JBU universe. And it's been really lovely to have like our audience follow us as we've evolved away from these like caricatures into like, 35, 36-year-olds who are like real.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I'm pretty entertained. Like last night, I'm sitting there watching it, and my son is 9, and he's like sitting next to me, and I was scrolling back to go like way back, and he goes, "Well, gosh, Mom, I mean, if they can swap out one of their characters, why can't you and Zach swap out?" And I was like, "That's the same person, babe. It's just been an evolution," and which was pretty cool. To just like have him like catch on to that. It's just been, I mean,
is he trying to fire me? What's the deal with that?
Yeah.
No, he's trying to find you a new work wife. He's like,
Gotcha.
Mom, you can find Zach a new work wife. That'd be cool. Yeah, but that's pretty neat. I just wanted folks who are interested to also be able to find you on Just Between Us. That's the title of it, right? I hope I didn't knock. Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Allison, tell us, who is the book for? Like who should buy this book and who should check out your channel? Is it, like who are you talking to?
I think it's anyone who is interested in marriage, either for themselves or just culturally and societally. So people that are either single and thinking about what they want out of their relationships, people who are maybe going to get engaged, want to know if they want to get married, newlyweds. Also people who've been married for a while, but realizing they don't need to be stuck in certain ways of thinking about it. But, it's a mix of both tangible tips and ways to think about it, but also kind of a cultural commentary on it as a whole. So the goal is for it to be a wide audience.
Yeah, very cool. No, I just got it the other day. I haven't quite read it, but now I'm like really wanting to. So I'm glad to really talk to you and kind of lean into some of these essays because they're, it seems like I have a lot to learn, even as a self-proclaimed relationship expert in my own right. So,
well, not self-proclaimed if you're licensed. That counts.
I guess so.
Yeah. The state of Washington seems to think you are an expert. Yeah. Thank you, Allison. Is there anywhere we should send folks? Like, is there a website that you want to send them to? It's like a catch-all.
You can find I think anywhere books are sold, but I also have a mental health focused Substack called Emotional Support Lady. I talk a lot about relationships on there and mental health in general. And then that also is an Instagram account as well, Emotional Support Lady.
Can my son send you some sketches that he was doing? He saw the sketches on your website, the stick figures, and he was like, I'm going to send Allison some because I think I've got some she would like. So I'll take a picture. I'll send it your way because he's like, he's a little bit of a character, but he's got some ideas for you.
He's a lot of bit of a character.
He is a lot of it. Yeah.
Hey, I was as well.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you, Allison. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for writing. I think it is a topic that we have talked about quite a bit of just like re-examining sort of the rules of marriage and the construct of marriage and what works for you. Kind of rewriting the vows for folks who have already been in it for a long time and just trying to figure out what works best for people. So I appreciate you putting all the time and energy into it and being on our podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Marriage Therapy Radio. Thank you, Allison, for being our guest today, coming on and chatting with us about your book, I think. Actually reminded me a lot of my days in sociology and just kind of looking at the social construct of marriage. And I just think it's good to consider the social construct that you have created and this idea of like, are you just kind of sliding into this image and obligations, or are you deciding as a couple? Another area to check out, Allison, is to go to emotionalsupportlady.substack.com. This is a weekly newsletter on mental health musings from a New York Times bestselling author. So thank you so much for all of your time and attention, making your relationship better today than it was yesterday.